Yeah, but I mean, you guys know why I'm dressed like this, so we can get started, I guess. But ultimately today we're going to be talking about the topic, and I'm using air quotes on this so everybody can see it, toxic masculinity, right? So I've seen a lot of on college campus things set up basically where people sit down and they'll have discussion with some of the students that disagree with them. But if you look at like Steven Crowder, he'll have a table set up and he says, blah, 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 change my mind, right? So one of the things he did before was toxic masculinity doesn't exist, change my mind. And it was very, very fun to listen to the dialogue between people. There's a lot of stuff I disagreed with, a lot of stuff I agreed with, but I mean...
Like people who watch this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But ultimately, I mean, I agree with him. I don't think toxic masculinity is a thing. I think it's something that people kind of created out of, it's kind of like a blanket statement. I'll just say that. They use it as a blanket statement to define just masculinity as a whole. So I want to ask you guys, where do you stand on this?
You want to go first?
Go for it.
I don't want to go first.
Okay.
But I will say this. So I think first we should define what is considered toxic masculinity. Right. So you had a definition brought up earlier. Do you still have that up?
Yeah. So toxic masculinity involves cultural pressures for men to behave in a certain way, and it's likely this affects all boys and men in some fashion. Toxic masculinity refers to the notion that some people's ideas of manliness perpetuates domination, homophobia, and aggression. To me, it's just basically they take anything that they don't like and attach it to masculinity because, men are bad kind of thing. So like being stoic, champion heterosexuality is an unalterable norm, being violent, being dominant, not displaying emotion, all these things are then tied with, well, that's toxic, when really a lot of the stuff they talk about is just bad human beings in general, whether masculine or not.
So do you believe toxic masculinity exists?
No.
Okay. Taryn?
I don't know yet.
Okay. So it's kind of up in the air.
Well, because I kind of feel like I do right now.
Okay.
Right? Like, because I do think, and I don't know if the proper term is toxic masculinity, but I do believe
It's another made-up term.
that there are just some men out there who are jerks.
Right.
And they do portray the attributes or whatever that fall under what the world defines as toxic masculinity. I think probably some of that was ingrained in them as a child from their father to be a horrible human being, like you said. So is there a difference between a jerk and just a masculine man who is a good guy? I think there's a difference. So I don't know if I completely disagree that it's a thing.
Okay.
But I'm not ready to just commit to saying it is a thing. So
Okay.
I'm kind of on the fence at the moment.
Gotcha. So the first part of the definition you read,
So change my mind.
trying to first part of the definition you said, I don't remember exactly what it was. Could you read the beginning again?
Involves cultural pressures for men to behave in a certain way.
Okay, I believe that exists.
But
I don't believe that's toxic masculinity, though.
But I do believe that now cultural pressure is for men to behave in a more feminine way.
Right.
Yep.
Right? Like it's
Yeah.
reversed. Like, and I understand, like when I was looking up some stuff on this, they were saying like, it's when you tell your son or your boy that they're not supposed to cry and they're supposed to just man up and they're supposed to do all of these things, which...
What's wrong with that?
Which, I mean...
to a certain degree, I don't know if you're saying it sarcastically, but to a certain degree, I kind of agree with that.
To a certain degree, I do understand. I also think that when you bottle up all of your emotions and don't let them out in a way, then you become a serial killer.
I also agree with that.
Yeah, but also there's a time to express emotion, I believe. There's a time not to express emotion, right? So when I'm telling my son, don't throw a fit right now in this particular setting, it's not okay. Like, that is not an okay thing. When we get home and you need to release some of your frustration or your emotion, that's one thing.
You're oppressing your son.
But I'm oppressing my son.
That's the idea.
But also, I think it's inappropriate for my kid to have a complete meltdown in the middle of the grocery store.
Yeah.
Because that's not okay. And as an adult, we understand that's not okay, right? Like if I have a complete meltdown in the middle of the grocery store, I'm probably going to spend the night in jail.
Yeah.
So in order to teach my kids, like, I don't want you to spend the night in jail when you're 21 or whatever. So control yourself and then deal with it in a more healthy way, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I think that people are saying, like, that's not okay. You should be able to express your emotion and not do it in a healthy way. So I think the cultural pressure is for men to portray themselves as weak or more vulnerable, which is not necessarily a bad thing within itself.
I think you can do it with certain people,
Right.
but not overall around everybody, because then
I think
people
the
just take
cultural
advantage of
pressure has
that.
shifted in reverse of what this is saying, that now they want men to not be masculine at all,
yeah.
right? Which goes against what they say is like cultural pressure makes man be masculine and mean. Well, now they're saying men should not be masculine at all, so they're not mean,
Yeah.
right? So now they're reversing it completely.
So is that just saying in general women can't be mean? If they're feminine, they can't be mean?
I will say almost anything on the podcast, but I'm not going to respond to that.
See, I really wish we had someone who disagreed
smart.
with us on here
See,
right now.
and really, masculinity, it's not a gender thing, really, ultimately, when you get down to the definitions.
Now, hold it. Then are you saying that women can be masculine?
Women display masculinity just like men display feminism, I guess.
Femininity.
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 There you go.
Anemone. It makes me think of Finding Nemo.
Yep.
I live in an anemone.
especially in a world where there really is no gender. Anyways, Tara.
Ultimately.
That's what I was wondering if you were getting at. Like, is there no gender at all, David? Are you?
There's no separation.
Yeah, is that what
No,
you're
but
saying?
yes, women can display toxic masculinity by the definitions. You know, being violent, being dominant, being stoic. That's a funny one to me. Like,
I don't think there's not an issue with being stoic.
no.
That's just being in control of your emotions. Now, if it's like a
Like-
repressed, like, I have an issue right now and it's been bottling up inside of me for 30 years, that's different than being stoic. That's just not taking care of yourself, ultimately.
That's borderline serial killer.
Yeah.
Borderline.
Borderline. I'm not saying you're there yet, but borderline.
Was one of them homophobic, too?
Yes. Well,
Interesting.
it says champion heterosexuality as an unalterable norm. These people love just talking. long words.
Oh, man. So you said something a moment ago, too, about, like, if Hayden was to start throwing a temper tantrum in the store, right? I have an issue with people who are against disciplining your child. They'll say that part of their argument is that, oh, he's a child, he doesn't know any better. Well, that's the whole point in disciplining him. I want him to know better. The way that you get people to stop acting like chaotic maniacs like they do when they're 3 years old is you treat them like they shouldn't be doing that. That's how
Right.
you get them to age well. That's how you get them to mature. They need to understand there are consequences to their actions, and there's a time and a place. I jumped backwards, sorry.
You jumped. Well,
Threw it off.
I think the whole thing is very. Well, yes, right. So if we're going to talk about that for just a second. Discipline is a natural thing. Now, it's going away, unfortunately, even as a social standard, right? Because, okay, so you're telling me that if I discipline my child, it's wrong. But if that person commits a crime, then they should be disciplined. So now we have a double standard.
Yeah.
But they're not really. I mean,
But-
look at the no bail reforms going on in the major cities where people commit violent crimes and they're released that
Well,
day.
that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
Nowadays,
gosh.
it's different because now the culture is actually switching to where people believe there shouldn't be discipline for actions that are bad.
That's
Right?
interesting.
Which is very weird because
See how they feel when their house gets robbed.
right? And I think a lot of it does come down to what's happening in an individual's personal life, right? So this doesn't affect me. So yeah, of course I agree. But then as soon as it does affect me, my stance might change. And I feel like the people who take stances on certain topics don't know what's going on because it's not really impacting their life. And so they're just like, yeah, I believe in that. Yeah, they should be able to demonstrate how they feel. Burn down buildings, I don't care. Oh, what? They're burning down a building next to mine. Now it's bad.
Yeah.
Right? And so when it's far away, we can support it. When it comes into our own life, then maybe
like
we don't support it. And if you do support it at that point, then I think we have a different issue around mental health, right? So like the people who supported burning businesses and looting businesses in the last 2 years were probably not the people who were having their businesses burned and looted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah.
so, because like, yeah, you should be able to express yourself that way, but they probably didn't have their livelihood being taken away at that moment. So it was really easy for them to say that. The person who said you should be able to express yourself was not the person who was beat up in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
Because I feel like as soon as that happens, now my mentality is going to change a little bit because now it's affecting me in my life. And I think that that applies here as well, where it's like you shouldn't discipline your kid or you shouldn't tell your kid to be masculine, okay, because your kid is fine. But my kid needs to be disciplined and my kid needs to know what it is to be a guy.
Yeah.
And be responsible for that, I guess.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, ultimately, the people coming up with these terms and these rules and these things, they don't have kids anyways. A lot of times.
A lot of it.
They have no skin in the game, but yet they're making the rules for everyone else that does.
So you brought that up. I was watching something today, and the last several days I've been talking about this, but the kind of idea, I mean, it goes along with toxic masculinity, but also basically the idea that like a lot of feminists, radical feminists, I'll just say that, they almost oppress the women who want the more traditional life as well. They say, because you're not a feminist, because you're not out there striving after a career or something like that, like you aren't one of us, or you're part of the patriarchy, you're taking part of it, you're brainwashed or whatever. And again, I really wish we had someone on here that like really truly to their core disagreed with us, because I don't want to represent.
You don't want to be the one to...
Well, I also don't want to misrepresent the other side.
Well, and that's why I have sometimes, like, I'm trying to really use my words carefully because I don't want somebody to come back and say, well, we don't believe that.
Yeah.
Right, and speak for them. But I feel like
there's plenty of people that do believe that.
But that's in general, that is kind of a main mentality. On the feminism piece, I actually read an article the other day that was from a feminist saying, imagine a world where you didn't have to work. 2 women. And I'm like...
Yeah, that system existed.
Isn't
You destroyed it.
right? Like, didn't you? Like, the whole point was you wanted to work.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. And I understand too. Like, we're talking about this from a perspective that we're not in all of the inner workings of stuff, right? So like, we don't necessarily where we live see a big difference in like the wage gap.
Yeah.
Between men and women. And that does exist in some areas.
Whoa.
No, it does not.
Do we disagree?
I think we disagree.
Probably.
I think we disagree on this.
So,
I'm excited.
I'm not going to say that it doesn't exist because I don't work at a Fortune 500 company where they're hiring executive level people at different levels or at different wages. So I cannot say emphatically that if a woman applies for a position at a Fortune 500 company, she's going to make the same wage as if a man applies. I can't say that because I don't know.
But a woman who takes 20 years off to raise a family is not going to make the same as a man who's worked the last 20 years.
True, because experience comes into play with that.
So there's all these factors that go into this wage gap.
Correct.
So I've got like an anecdotal
Jeremiah
thing
got
for
really
you right
excited
here.
just now because he thought
I
we were gonna
really
disagree
did,
on something.
especially since like I know a personal case, and
Oh,
obviously
please
this isn't like this doesn't speak for everybody. This is just a personal case. People use this in arguments all the time, and it's not set up for a factual thing. But you see this overwhelmingly throughout a lot of businesses. Here's what happened: is I got a good friend who he works in engineering, and he got hired at this certain amount. A girl got hired like 6 or 7 months after him at this certain amount, right? And she and her husband, I guess, were talking about how they needed more income. And so she went to her, or sorry. So they're at the same wage. I'm trying to create a timeline here. So they're at the same wage, right? They're both doing the same amount of work at the exact same rate. He didn't go in, and both of them were upset about their pay. He didn't go in and ask for a raise. But because her and her husband had talked about how she needed a raise, they needed more money, otherwise they were going to move because she got offered a job somewhere else. They immediately said, okay, we'll bump up your pay $20,000 if you'll stay here. That's all it took. Now he went in because he heard that and asked for a raise and says we can't afford that right now.
Because they just gave her 20 grand.
Because they just gave her 20 grand. All it would have taken was saying, hey, I've got a better offer. If he had gone out and looked for other offers somewhere else, saying, hey, I need a competitive wage. It's not like there aren't a shortage of workers right now. Man, I can't talk. So the fact that would have given him a hand. He just didn't take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. I love my friend to death, but he didn't. Yeah, exactly. He didn't pursue growth in the company. So that was given to a woman, and I see no issue with that.
I don't see an issue with it at all.
So I mean, it's an example of how, and even in her case, like their bosses are already aware she's gonna take time off in a couple of years so that she can go have kids, and they're like, okay, whatever. So when you see, I forgot what the statistic was, but I've heard it many times. But when you look at women in the workforce now, same exact job, same exact position. I'm not sure if it's after they said they weren't going to have kids, or I forget what it was now, dang it. But basically, women are making more than men if they're in the exact same position, and they made it clear, like, hey, I'm not going to leave for kids. That's not my plan. They end up making more than men. Now, I wonder if some of that is because the company doesn't want to get accused of...
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So culture is obviously shifting, right? Because this thing has been under scrutiny for a long time, that now there's a lot of extra compensation being made to show that that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've watched a lot of Thomas Sowell, Sowell, but he's been talking about these things for the last 30, 40 years and basically fighting against feminism, and he's an economist. And so really his arguments haven't changed in like 40, 50 years. And there's still the same things about how women, like unmarried, that's going to be a variable in how much they make. Because if they have kids or not. These are all things that tie into that. So I think the whole thing is just stupid, saying there's a gap at all.
Well, and predominantly, like, the reason why that is, I think, because if a person is married, if it's a man, you're still less likely to go home and spend the night with your kids because you don't have to worry about breastfeeding. You don't have to worry about, like, a variation of things that women do have to worry about. And I love that. Women are awesome. Women are amazing.
Shout out just in case anybody's ready to turn us off. Women are awesome.
The role of a wife or a woman in general has been downplayed so much. Like, oh, we're just supposed to have kids. But, like, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
You can make a human being inside your body and raise that child. Like, why is that downplayed as such a bad thing for women to do?
I don't want to do that.
I'm talking about for women. I'm talking about women.
Like, that's not well, it kind of is an aspiration of mine just because I'm pretty sure I could make a ton of money.
Mm-hmm. The publicity alone.
Yeah, the publicity in this.
You'd be set.
Here's my body for science experiments. Give me money. But I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. Not even a little bit. But I don't remember where I was going with that before we got off on this whole wage gap thing, because I mentioned the wage gap and it derailed the entire conversation.
Yeah, I got pretty excited. I'm sorry.
I'm still, even with your thing, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, because again, I'm not in that setting to be able to see that firsthand. We all read statistics. I don't trust any of the statistics I read from any side. Like, it's all very geared towards whatever their opinion is on that point. So I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. I'm not going to say it does exist either, for those of you who are watching and thinking that I'm taking your side. I'm not. But I don't even remember what my point was before we got onto that. As far as why I brought that up in the first place.
Okay, so if you don't remember,
we need to rewind.
Hopefully it comes back to you. But I do want to ask you then, what would be your arguments for why it may exist?
Why men make more money than women?
Yeah.
I think,
why are you opposed to committing to it doesn't exist? I'm just curious.
Well, because I don't know if it does or not.
Oh, okay.
That's why I'm opposed to committing to it does or it doesn't. Because
I'm backpedaling.
I'm not in the hiring position. And that was what I was saying is, like, I'm not in these companies that are paying six figures to people and then adjusting those figures based off of, I'm not in that. I live in an area where, we live in an area where pretty much everybody, it doesn't matter what gender you are. If you apply at my job, you're going to make the same starting wage as the other person, whether they're male or female.
Yeah.
If you apply at, the grocery store, you're going to make the same starting wage regardless if you're male or female. So the world that I'm in, everybody makes the same wage regardless. When you're in a company that's making billions and billions and billions of dollars every year, I've not worked for one of them. So I don't know what that looks like at the executive level there. That's why I'm not committing one way or the other, because I really don't know. Why I brought it up, though, is not coming back to me, and now I feel really silly.
Darn.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm sure it was a good point, though.
Oh, yeah.
You'll think of it later, like, man, that was really
Like,
good.
2 o'clock in the morning is when I'm going to think about it. I'm going to be like, wake up from a dead sleep and be like, this is what I was trying to say.
Well,
I'll
as far
text
as
you guys. Like, oh, remember that point? This is it.
the wage gap, I think it's probably not very popular, but men are more likely to work more, work longer hours, work a weekend, miss a baseball game or a birthday, put in the extra time, pull a double. Men are just more likely to do that.
And that's where you're an
women.
absent father, David, because now you're missing those things that are important.
Working for the future.
They also work jobs that tend to have a higher death probability.
Yeah.
That's another
That's
thing,
the thing about equal jobs.
Like
Like, you don't see
mining.
this,
too.
you don't see a lot of women applying for like garbage men or,
Yeah.
construction worker.
Yeah.
I mean, I see a lot of women.
Last
at
time
the
you
dump.
saw a
It's
woman
a-
jump out and grab a
No, but
It's a
at the
pretty
dump,
small percentage.
at the dump, I see a lot of women
What job are they working though?
telling me where to park
Yeah.
at the dump.
It's telling you where to park, or they're the ones taking your money inside the little
That's true as well too.
box thing, you know?
That's true too.
It's
because they have to also because of the system that's been created.
it's the patriarchy.
I don't see a lot of women steel workers, but that doesn't mean they're not there.
I mean, I'm not-
oil derricks.
I don't think either of us are saying they don't exist. I'm
No.
just saying the percentage of women that are in these fields, especially when you start getting into what is it called? STEM fields?
Mm-hmm.
STEM fields?
Oh yeah, and
Into these specific, there are certain jobs that are just predominantly run by women because men don't really have any interest in it. There are some men that do, or some men they'll recognize, hey, I can make good money doing that, and I don't have to risk my life doing it, so I'm going to go do that. And likewise, there are some women that just take interest in like tech work, like they might want to be an IT person. That's predominantly a male field. Dangerous jobs that we talked about, predominantly
Smoke jumping.
male. What?
Smoke jumping.
crab
What is that?
fishermen.
Crab
Crab
fisherman?
fisherman,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, I've never seen a woman on Deadliest Catch in my entire life.
Smoke jumping is the firefighters that jump out of the helicopter or plane
Into
into
the
the middle of the
fires.
fire to try and start fighting it from inside.
Oh, that sounds horrifying.
It sounds awesome, but I would die.
I-
So
I would never. Oh, goodness.
I want to jump out of
See,
a plane though. So.
But yeah, like interests come into play. So like when you hear about the wage gap, usually they're just talking about like straight up men make this much, women make this much. It doesn't go into a lot of detail basically about which fields they're talking about, which specific jobs they're talking about, different positions, how long they've been there, stuff like that.
And I think you brought up a good point, is experience, right? So experience plays huge into, like when I got hired at my job, I was able to negotiate a little bit higher wage than what the starting wage was because of my experience. Somebody that came in after me, male or female, didn't have the same experience, couldn't negotiate the same wage. So, I mean, a lot of that does play into it. It does. Anyways, back to toxic
But
masculinity.
the fact we even think that way is very toxic.
the fact that I think
Way to
that
bring that around there, David.
Yeah.
That was
Full
good.
circle.
the fact that I think that doesn't matter what gender you are, you still make the same money. In my job, you do, unless you have more experience.
Yeah.
When
that happens, when women get paid less for the exact same job, like that's how lawsuits happen. Like
nowadays,
Yeah.
absolutely. If that's the reasoning behind it,
right.
so yeah.
What about what are some more examples on that? On that same definition, there was like a list of words. Stoic, there was
Oh yeah, stoic. Let's see. Here's 8 signs: aggression, violence,
I'm anti-aggression and
which I
violence.
don't think violence isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's how it's performed, I guess.
No, violence is bad, David.
It's not.
I would say aggression, you could argue,
Good men-
could be a good thing.
There's been a
Like,
lot of good
depending
men
on
who
what
were
your career
violent.
is.
Violence
Well, if
helped
you're a
build
UFC
this
fighter,
country.
Well,
you know,
okay, yeah.
aggression
UFC
and
fighter,
violence
like, you're
are
in the
both
military or
important.
Without
something like
violence,
that.
we wouldn't have this country. Without toxic masculinity, we wouldn't have this country. Like,
Okay, I agree with you, but I think in this context, I would just narrow
Aggression and violence
I would
is
narrow
That's the thing,
violence
is
down
this-
to like random acts of violence.
Well, that's
like,
the thing with these; it all gets
just-
lumped together.
Yeah.
I really
okay.
feel like this is talking about wife beating.
yeah.
Like really,
Bullying and harassment.
Uh-huh.
That's the next
or
one.
Okay.
like the aggression or violence is talking about like that alpha male syndrome, right? Where you're at the bar. Or
I don't have an
wherever,
issue with an alpha male complex.
And you don't have an issue.
I don't have that complex, but I do not have an issue with it. There are certain people, genuinely, they're just natural born leaders. If
But no, so this is the thing. A natural born leader does not make you, by definition, the alpha male by what the world says. Right? The alpha
Okay.
male thing
Okay.
is where, like, I see you and I need to, like, show that I'm better than you and stronger than you and more dominant than you so that I can have the
An
girl
alpha
over there,
male
or I can
doesn't
okay, what about
have
the
to.
workplace?
An alpha male doesn't have to do that, though. He just is.
You don't have
that.
to like consciously think about that.
Same thing at the
Okay.
workplace, wherever.
Yeah.
But we're in a setting where now I need to show some sort of dominance over you, and that's
What if you
what
and
the
I were
alpha male
competing for a
thing-
job?
That doesn't make that's not alpha male though. The alpha male thing is where I'm going to exhibit dominance over you in a setting so that I get the recognition and you are not subject to me.
But it's all
Okay.
masculinity. I mean, competition. That's all masculinity, and I don't know.
It falls under this umbrella here.
Mm-hmm.
I would continue the. I'm trying to think of a career field where that would matter. Like, okay, UFC obviously, but that's different because that's part of your job.
Yeah.
But like, what if it was like a talk show host or something like that? And I needed in order for me to beat you out for this position, I needed to make you uncomfortable. I needed to assert my dominance over you so that you performed poorly, so that people recognize that I have.
I don't think that
this.
falls under the alpha. I don't feel like that falls under the alpha male definition though.
Okay.
That is just competing for the job, and now I'm pushing you down so I can step on
looking
your
at
head and go up.
Yeah, I'm not,
Okay. Thank you. I like that.
I feel like the alpha male is where I need to pump myself up and peacock a little bit so that you feel intimidated.
Still, in certain
it's
settings,
just a
I'm
dominant male animal in a group. A male tending to assume a dominant or domineering role. But also definitions change every other year.
yeah,
Right.
that's true.
But I still don't think that in a job. I feel like the alpha male syndrome, in a toxic masculinity type of definition, or that would come into that, is not around my employment so much. Now, we're not competing for a job. We have the same position in the office, but now I'm going to exert dominance over you so that I have more respect of my peers, even though we're not, like, we're exactly the same level, but I need to seem better than you and stronger than you and more dominant than you, so I'm going to put you down and push you down.
that just makes you a jerk.
Well,
But that's
the
what makes
whole,
you a jerk. And
that's the whole thing of toxic masculinity is that peer pressure to make you feel like you need to do that.
what's funny is I read a thing on the alpha male syndrome and how this whole thing started from a scientific, what's the word? Not test, but there's another word for
Some
it.
sort of study or
Study.
case study.
Where
Maybe? I don't
they
know.
took the whole thing started because of wolves having an alpha male wolf who would basically run the pack by being stronger, and the other males would like roll over on their back or cower to him, and he would exert this dominance by putting them in their place. What they found is that's 100% false. In captivity, that will happen.
Okay.
In the wild, you have not seen it one time. In their natural environment, the pecking order usually falls into place where there's an alpha male, still considered an alpha male, the leader of the pack.
It's because all societies are ran by the greatest weak men among them.
But the leader of the pack is not the one who exerted dominance over everyone else. He's the one who just started the pack.
Okay.
Usually,
It's just the oldest one
Usually the parent.
Okay.
And so this whole like alpha male description came from a false scientific study of what happened to the wolves in captivity, where the male needs to exert dominance over everybody else by putting them in their place and being more aggressive and all this stuff so that they just fall into line. That doesn't happen. And when you really think about this in society, and you even said it already, when you have people who just kind of stand up and take the lead without putting somebody else down because they're just a natural leader, people just kind of fall in the line and be like, okay, we're going to do what he said. We're going to follow, and he's giving us some direction. And when you're picking out project leaders, when you're in a supervisory role, you don't usually pick the jerk. You pick the person who you know is just kind of going to be able to have people get things done. And so in reality, the alpha male syndrome, where I need to dominate over you, is something that was perpetuated because of a false study, something that wasn't actually a natural thing. And I think that kind of got into our brains where we need to be that dominant person, which just makes you look like an idiot. The dominant person is the person who's just able to take control of a situation without putting people down, and be a leader. I think you just said there's natural born leaders.
It's just all the stuff beta males say.
Now, what we need to model society after is lions. Let me tell you something I learned the other day.
They eat their babies?
This is factual, but I'm saying this as a joke. I'm telling everybody in advance, we don't need to model lions. Lions will, they fight, right? Oftentimes, they'll kill the weaker male.
Right.
But afterwards, if you defeat the previous alpha, they'll go around, and if there were any cubs from that alpha, they will kill all the cubs because they're weeding out the weak link.
Yeah.
We don't want to be like the lion.
No, we don't. Actually, I think the lions would fall under this form of Darwinism, right? So the strongest survive, survival of the fittest.
Or is it they're taking on a future competition because they killed the dominant lion?
That could be it.
Which obviously wasn't.
His baby would have remembered.
Anyways,
it's like the idea basically oh, you were the weak one. I don't want weak genes in my pride. So
yeah. Not like where they're killing out the family.
Yeah.
Not like the Lion King.
That's like an
where I
actual
get
governmental
most of
thing, though, isn't it? Like when a new king would take over,
He would kill
he would
all
kill.
of the
Oh man,
all of the
That's bad.
heirs, so that nobody can come back and say that's my dad's throne. It actually belongs to me, not you.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I would hate to be related to a king. I'd just be in constant fear of that my entire life.
Well, and then
unless
you
I
see
was next in line.
Well, then you see kings though who killed their own kids because they didn't want their kid to usurp their authority. So it's like, dad's getting old. He shouldn't be king anymore. I'm next in line. And so old dad is like, go kill Junior because I don't want him to take my throne. So that happened. So that happened a lot too. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be like 8th in line. That's the sweet spot.
Because you're just like the young guy. Nobody even remembers that you're born. Dad dies, and you're the only one left. So then you're fine. Yeah.
You got a lot of power, but yeah, you're far enough away from the throne.
Oh man. Goodness. Okay, so all that we're talking about here with toxic masculinity, though, I think it's important to recognize that we just need to remove masculinity from that, because it's not just masculinity; it's just toxic people. Because there are plenty of women that represent those exact same traits, but you could say toxic femininity, which is like people in, what is it, third wave feminism now?
So I think I will agree with you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. I think I will agree with you because I do believe in toxic masculinity, but I also agree in toxic feminism.
Okay.
Do you think it's really a big problem?
I agree. Well, I let me finish.
Okay, I'm just saying. Is it systemic?
I say that I'm agreeing if we recognize that everything is toxic if not done correctly.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So not just removing toxic from masculinity and just calling it, no, there is toxic masculinity. There are masculine men who are toxic.
I don't think that's toxic masculinity. That's just a masculine
I'm trying
man
to use,
who happens
I'm trying to use
be
words that are not going to get me in trouble later.
You can have
So
a feminine man that's toxic.
But there's
Masculinity
toxic
is good.
feminism, there's toxic children, there's toxic
Yes.
old people, there's toxic, every person can be toxic.
Yeah.
So to placate to those people who like toxic masculinity and want to keep it in there, I'm not going to disagree with it. There are toxic masculine people. But on the flip side, there's toxic everyone.
There needs to be a comma.
So we need to remove it from everything or add it to every single thing, right? Because, I know some elderly people who are super toxic. right? Like they're just
Dish.
mean,
Who are
bitter old people.
Start laying some names out. Who are you talking
I'm not name dropping. No, but I mean, but there are but there's just bitter, mean people out there.
Yeah.
And male, female, young, old, doesn't matter. There's
Well-
just some really mean, toxic people out there. So I'm saying let's add toxic to everything or remove toxic from everything. And just say, you're a jerk or you're a horrible person or you need to go crawl in a hole and live life by yourself.
Well, yeah, and I do think there's toxic masculinity, but like I was telling you
Look at
beforehand.
that, sway David.
Well, I was telling you before, I watched
I
a
saw air
video.
quotes around that.
I saw a video on it, and the guy was breaking it down, and he was using Biff from Back to the Future as his examples.
David watched Back to the
And
Future and took it as study time. Air
Real-
quotes on that one.
A real underdog story. But every clip they show him, and you're just, this guy's just a jerk and just the worst person. And those guys do exist, but I think it's a big problem, and that's everywhere. And we can just start throwing words like toxic masculinity and narrow it down to just masculinity, really, just men. It's just crazy. There's just jerks out there, and we can recognize them pretty easily.
Are you looking at me? Did you just talk?
Oh, yeah.
So again, let's just make that a biffette.
Yeah.
A biffette. There are plenty of women out there that portray those
Well, there is too, and
attributes.
You go down the list, and it's like men, women do that. Men, women do that. Men, women do that. So,
well, and part of this is like I think a big push for the toxic masculinity piece is, and I'm putting the air quotes so that you all know that I'm not disagreeing with you at the moment. But it's like these individuals who are becoming toxically masculine or whatever, it's put into them as they're being raised, right? So they're being told, like I think at the beginning I might have said it, might have been before we started recording, but like when you look at the stuff, it's like don't cry, man up, all of these things. It's being put in them, being put into them as they're being raised to be toxic. But at the same time, we can see where some girls are raised to hate men, don't have children, don't, whatever, be independent and all of this stuff, which in itself is actually, not the hate men part necessarily, but in itself is not completely unhealthy either. If you don't want to have kids, don't have kids. If you want to have a career, have a career.
Yeah.
If you want to be independent, be independent. Like that's okay. But sometimes it's pushed into them to where now they just become a bitter person who doesn't like anybody else in the world. So I think really it comes in that child rearing time where they're not malleable, but what is that word? Impressionable. Where they're impressionable, it really comes from, are you teaching your children to be a good person in general, or are you teaching them to be bitter and judgmental? And so that can go in any direction, whether you're male or female, masculine or feminine. It doesn't matter one way or the other. I think that really at this point we have kind of gotten to a place in our society where we have seen mistakes that have been made, right? And I will say that historically, there were probably some mistakes when some men were being raised to be jerks.
Yeah.
You don't take nothing from nobody, and the wife is meant to be here, and you are the head of the house, and you treat her this way, and she doesn't get a say, and all of this kind of stuff, right? There was these gender roles that, biblically speaking, were correct that we took and exaggerated to be inappropriate.
Yeah.
Right? So we see some of this stuff, and then we try to correct it and go to an extreme where now we're worse off than we were before, or at least equally as bad. Where instead of saying, you know what, we're going to try and make up for those times where maybe we weren't raising our boys the right way, where we were teaching them to be kind of jerks. And instead of saying, so let's try and raise them correctly and find some middle ground to where, you know what, you can be strong and you can be tough and you can want to protect your family and work hard and build something, but also don't be a jerk and treat people with kindness and respect and love your wife and love your children and be present for them, and those kinds of things, and try and find that middle ground. We jump to this, well, no, we're going to completely go against being tough and working hard and protecting your family to where she can protect herself, do whatever you want to do, and be a sissy.
Yeah.
Right. And so we try and overcompensate to fix that. And we see that in literally every single aspect. We see that in the racism part where, yes, historically, America was racist. I'm sorry, it's true.
Don't even get me started.
Huh?
Don't even get me started.
I know, but we have. I mean, there's a lot of things there was a lot of unjust things that happened.
Yeah.
I'm not going to deny that was a fact, but we don't try and overcompensate today to make that better.
How about we stop getting in a time machine and looking how it was?
Well, I'm just saying.
No, yeah, I know.
We need to find middle ground to fix the issue to where we actually have balance and we're healthy instead of just going to this other extreme to try and make up for it, where now we're creating a different type of toxicity, right? So now we have this other issues that are now being developed and pushed in our society so that in another 80 years, we're like, oh, now we got to go back and fix all of this stuff that we did.
Yeah.
Where if we could just find some balance and we could find some middle ground, I'm probably sure I've said this before, and I know that he's going to be watching this and he's going to be like, you quoted me. But my dad has always said, and I mean, I don't remember everything he said, but this has always stuck with me. It doesn't matter which side of the swing you fall out of, it's going to hurt. The only good ride is the balance in the middle, right? If you fall out face forward, it's going to hurt. If you fall out on your back of your head, it's going to hurt. The only good ride is when you're balanced in the middle. And that's true with society. Yes, don't raise jerk boys. Don't raise jerk girls. But also don't take away any opportunity that they have to just develop themselves how they want to be by pushing the opposite of that. Let them develop naturally without pushing in a bunch of different stuff. And I can get on a bunch of things right now about transgender and picking your gender. I mean, just leave them alone.
Yeah.
Love them, teach them to be good humans, teach them to love each other, teach them to contribute to society, teach them to work hard, teach them to have those kinds of characteristics, and then see where they go. And I feel like society would balance out a whole lot better. But that's just my 2 cents on the... Maybe that was 20 cents.
That was 10 cents worth at least.
Yeah.
At least. I liked it. So there was I think it was Sweden. I could be wrong, but there was this one country that they required and regulated how or like what percentage of males and females went into certain workforces. They said we need more males in this workforce because blah blah blah, or we need more females in this course, blah blah blah, to get them up to a certain number. And what happened was the differences between the men and the women as like gender specific, like in your typical like stereotypical gender attributes were exaggerated because they were so similar, like they had to work in similar workforce. So the other parts of their life were exaggerated in their differences, which I thought was really weird.
Hold it, what?
So, I don't know how. Could you look that up?
What, yeah.
I think it was Sweden.
So they were having to balance out how much of each gender was in each work field.
Yes.
And then what was exaggerated exactly?
Their male and female attributes. So, like, men became extraordinarily more masculine, and women became extraordinarily more feminine. Like your stereotypical, like feminine roles and characteristics and attributes and stuff like that.
Because they were working together.
Yeah.
I
don't know if it was because they were working together or simply just because I feel like that's probably the best reason why, honestly.
Right,
but
because now the men were taking care of the more masculine things and the women were taking care of the more feminine, and the women weren't having to do things outside of their range.
Outside of their comfort. And like they weren't, yes, okay, there we go. So they didn't have an interest in this male job that they were now like being told they needed to go work in, essentially. So all their other feminine characteristics were like, okay, well, I'm going to make up for that because I didn't get to be a woman today, it felt like. So, I mean, I might be
so then they wanted to put on a
overanalyzing,
fancy dress and look nice.
Yeah, I might be overanalyzing right there, but.
And I think that that's actually like
saying affirmative action didn't work.
Yes, exactly. Oh gosh, no, affirmative action didn't work.
Affirmative action has never worked, ever.
No.
There's a lot of stuff about, I'm not sure how to narrow it down.
Dang it. Okay. Well, I wish
Let's
I had
not get
prepared
started
it
on
beforehand.
affirmative action because that's a whole, but it's bad. But with that, I can see though, like, and someone can judge me all you want to, but there are certain things that I ask my sons to do, and there are certain things that I ask my daughter to do based off of their capability.
Yeah.
And it's not that I think that my daughter is less; she's just not as strong as my oldest son. right? So when I say, hey, I need you to go pick up right now, because we've been doing a bunch of building, and there's this tabletop table saw, right? So it's not like a full table saw, but just set it up, and it's she can't pick it up. She can't. So I'm gonna be like, Hayden, Gabe, go pick up the table saw, take it back down to the shop. I'm not gonna say, hey, Ari, go pick up this thing that's too heavy for you, take it down to the shop. That would be unrealistic and rude. Now, can she work to become strong enough to pick it up? Absolutely, she can.
Yeah.
But she's not interested in it. She doesn't care to become strong enough to pick it up, so it's not gonna happen. So I'm not like putting her down by not asking her to accomplish that task.
Yeah.
I'm recognizing you can't do it. That's fine. I'm going to ask somebody who can do it to do it. And she's okay with that. She doesn't go, why aren't you making me go pick up something that's too heavy for me?
Yeah.
Why aren't you pushing me to be stronger so that I can go pick it up? Because you don't care. I pushed you to do what you want to do. Like, you want to play volleyball? Then I'm going to push you to go practice and play volleyball better.
Yeah.
I'm not going to push you to go and do what the boys are doing, because that's your two completely different interests. I'm not saying she couldn't eventually get to that point, but she doesn't want to get to that point.
Yeah.
So why are we pushing certain things on people if they really don't care? And if they do care, then let's support them to go do what they want to do, but not then also tear down those. So I'm not going to tear down Hayden because he went and picked it up and Ari didn't. Right?
How dare he?
I know, right? Why would you go pick up that table saw? She should have done it.
Yeah.
And he's like, but she couldn't do it. Well, shame on you for telling her she couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But she couldn't do it. Or if she did get strong enough to do it, and Hayden went and picked it up, I'm not going to be like, shame on you for doing that. You should have let your sister do that. Why? She didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And even if she did, he got there first. A big deal. And I'm exaggerating. Nobody wants to move anything in my house. Are you kidding? All of my kids would be like, I'll wait for them to do it. No one. My kids are going to be like the first to jump up and go run and do something.
Yeah.
But I guess my point with that is, when you were thinking about this, like, she's going to let him take care of the harder stuff because she has nothing to prove.
Yeah.
She doesn't care. I mean, with this thing that you're talking about in the other country. And it makes sense that and we do this too. If David can do something better than I can do it, by all means, David, go do it. I don't need to go do it. If Jeremiah can look better in a tank top than me, by all means, look better in a tank top than me. That's fine.
I have issues with it.
Corey does things that I can't wrap my brain around. I'm not intimidated by it. I'm like, good. Someone can do that. My brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I wish it did, but it's not going to.
Yeah.
So more power to you. If we would start, again, this is a perfect utopia world. If we would start celebrating the things that people can do and not expecting them to live up to each other all the time, I think that would also help. Where, okay, a woman doesn't want to go do this, and if she does, then by all means go do it. I don't care one way or the other.
It's the feeling of they should, like STEM, like more men are in STEM fields. But women should be in those. Well, why? If they don't want
have
to,
any interest.
why do they push it so hard?
Yeah.
And if they want to, let them.
Yeah.
Don't stop them from doing it.
Right.
Right.
But don't make it harder for the people that want to do it also.
But true.
By trying to get more of this group in here. Just like MIT or Harvard, I think, with the SAT scores and all that, black people had to score less than whites and Asians.
Asian people. Oh man.
They really dropped their scores, or they had to raise their scores up really high.
Yeah.
Because they were scoring better than everyone else.
Requirement.
And it's
just so silly. That's just
their
their family raised them well.
If Harvard's
That's
full of
what
Asian
happened.
people, so what?
Yeah.
Like, they're the ones scoring the best, then by all means, okay.
That sounds mildly racist to me. That they would do that. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Affirmative action where we go backwards and so I mean, I don't have a lot to say, so I'll wait till you guys are done with my wrap up comments. But
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about what you said about your daughter not wanting to go outside and lift the heavy thing. Say she could, right? Say it was a different job, like mowing the lawn or something like that. We get into
she might want to mow the lawn the first time.
Traditionally,
Right.
traditionally, like household roles, right? Different household jobs, stuff like that. Typically, men take out the trash. Men would, I don't know, wash the car. Men would mow the lawn. Men would trim the trees and clean all that stuff up. Wintertime,
Chop the
men
firewood.
rake the leaves, chop the firewood, stuff like that. and men predominantly would be in the house doing dishes,
Women.
taking after the kid. What did I say?
Men would be in the house.
Oh,
doing-
whoopsies. Women would be in the house taking care of the kids.
I'm not doing the
cleaning,
dishes. Are you
doing
kidding me?
dishes, laundry.
Well, yeah, growing up, it came down to my dad would ask me to mow the lawn, and my sister to do the dishes.
Yeah.
And I might have grumbled at the time, but even then I knew, like, well, yeah, I'm 16, I lift weights, I'll go and do the yard work,
Yeah.
as opposed to my little sister who's, can't even move the lawnmower.
Well, say she could again, like what Taryn was saying. Say she wanted to, and say she wanted to at that point. I have no problem with that. If my wife Alexa told me she wants to mow the lawn, I'll do the dishes.
Tell me.
That's one of my wife's
I'll
favorite
do the
things.
dishes,
is
no problem.
doing yard work. She does it, and I'm fine with letting her do it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's something you also kind of you have to set that expectation when you get married, when you first start to live with somebody. Because I mean, there was a time or two I got myself in trouble with Alexa because I'm like, hey, I mowed the lawn. Would you go do the laundry? And she's like, yeah, I'll get to it later. And I'm like, well, that's not really fair because I just did the lawn. I'm sweating. I'm hungry. I'm starving. Would you at least like make me food or something like that? And she's like, why do you expect me to do that? And I'm like, well,
young Padawan, you.
I just did this for you.
Sorry.
So why wouldn't you do this
See,
for me kind of thing? It was,
You got to learn not to
Yeah.
do the yard first.
wait till she.
Wait till the dinner is cooked, and then
Oh,
go
then
do
it's like, okay, I'm not going to say that. It's going to sound really bad.
You'll learn.
But so there's an actor, Anthony Mackie. He plays Falcon in the Avengers, right? No, Falcon, yeah. Right? Falcon. Yes, okay. So he was in an interview with this lady, and the lady asked him, she's like, okay, what would you say if, and like she gave the example of like should a woman make her man food or something like that if the guy expects it. And apparently Anthony Mackie grew up like in the South where traditional household roles, men and women's roles, were like much ingrained in who you are, right? Which I also think it's kind of funny that people don't talk about that with black people, just white people.
Right.
Another topic.
Another topic.
But anyway, she asked him, what would you say about
White
this?
people bad.
And so, what?
Because white people bad.
Yeah, exactly.
I was hoping that's what you just said. I was like, hold on, what did you just say?
So she asked him, what do you say about this, And so his comment was, if you're expecting me to do this, if you're expecting me to do that, then you make daddy a sandwich. And that's what he said, and it cracked me up. And like there's a bunch of laughter and clapping from the crowd and stuff like that. He's like, if I'm outside, if it's 90-something degrees outside, and I'm sweating, making sure that your yard looks pretty so that when we have guests over, you look like you have a kempt house, I want you to bring me some lemonade. That's if I'm doing this for you, you do this for me. That's what I have an expectation for in a marriage. And it just cracked me up because
And then you told Alexa that, and she went, and you
No, see,
can
the
now
thing
make
is,
your dinner for the
you
rest
let
of the
that,
week.
You let that play randomly as she's coming through. And then
Yeah.
Yeah, so she just hears it. It's not you saying it. You're
Yeah.
watching it.
Yeah, I'm not that smart. We talked about it. She agrees.
We
but
talked about
the
it.
way that it was phrased definitely got me in trouble.
I know she's
said it
probably
wrong.
going to watch this, and I feel like she won. We talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
If-
probably she's...
If that's the end of the comment, we talked about it. Just assume that I lost. Because if I won, I'd probably tell you.
He's like, and then I told her, and this is what happened. But that wasn't the way it was. It was just like, and then we talked about it.
Yeah. Good times. Good times. But yeah, I think it's important to have like a balanced role, especially like now that there are more women in the workforce. If we compare now to like the 40s or something like that, when workforce was almost all men, it's important to balance those things out between the two of you, whatever that balance may be. Like if you just naturally have like a low energy person, they might be completely wiped by the end of the day. So like if Alexa has a really tough day at school, I'm happy to pick up the extra things because she's tired and I want her to rest up so that we can enjoy more time together in the evening. But
He's such a romantic.
thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just talk about expectations in the house. I think it's sad that the idea of a traditional woman is kind of getting shoved away.
Right.
Which
it's
is
not
sad.
Yeah,
But
well,
also
absolutely.
it's sad that the idea of a
terribly sad.
traditional man is getting shoved
Well, you have
away.
these
Yeah.
women that are told their whole lives, you don't need to have kids, you don't need to have a family, you don't need to do this and that. And then they get to be 40, 45, and they realize, wow, I really wish I had some kids.
A lot of those women are
Really wish I had a
really
family.
sad.
Yeah.
Genuinely, the women who chose that lifestyle, they're just sad and
And it's not
grumpy
everyone.
about-
There's exceptions
No,
to the
yeah.
rule, but like
Absolutely.
on the whole, I think women are better at running a family. Men are better at providing.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's just certain things. We're just naturally, not we as men, but like men
think,
and
Corey?
women. There's just certain things you
What do you
naturally lean
I
towards
thought he
or
was
are
going to
better
say
at.
something, but he didn't.
Yeah.
Let me hang myself with my own rope.
I'm just letting you talk.
Yeah.
Just say what you want to say, and we'll see what happens when the comments come in.
If you don't like it, I guess I don't care.
Still gonna be on the podcast.
Yeah,
So.
still be on the podcast.
There was this funny video I saw the other day, and this one might actually get me in trouble. But there was this woman who she was talking to this guy. I can't quote it exactly, but it was along the lines of, she was talking to the man, and she said, and you're just intimidated because at the end of the day, you know that women are stronger and women are happier, and that's why we live longer. And so he pauses for a moment, and he goes, and it's men that die young, and men that are married to women like you just want to die sooner, is what he said. Man, I rephrased that like 3 different times. I butchered that.
We understood what you were saying.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I feel like that goes, never mind. I'm not even going to go there. Yeah, not at all. I think
Go there.
I think that there are obviously unchangeable gender roles.
Yeah.
Unchangeable. No matter how many surgeries you have, at least with today's technology, you are still not going to birth a child.
Maybe someday.
It's possible.
crossed.
Don't get me wrong. With all the, who knows?
Yeah.
But at this point,
Scientists
you're
decide to
not.
play
You
God
can
long
you can
enough.
simulate it all you want.
Yeah.
You can pretend all you want, but it's not going to happen. There are just some gender roles you can't change, right? But I think that I don't think necessarily that it's horrible that discussions around it have come up, where there's this thing that popped up, and it's like these ads for just different products. And it's like, we all know that a woman's place is in the kitchen. And like, it's going through this whole thing. And I'm like, that is really rough. Like,
Yeah.
when I look at like the ads from the 40s, I'm like,
They had like medicine. Hey, wives, take this pill and you'll be happy.
yeah. And it was. Really, buy her this new frying pan. She'll make better food. Like, all of this kind of
I
stuff.
got you this new shop vac. Like,
And it was kind of cringy to look at. Like, I understand. Like, it's not necessarily bad that we have some conversations that you're a person. You're not just a slave.
Yeah.
You are my partner in life. You're not just the person who makes you my food and does my laundry and raises my children. So I don't think that the discussion around it is necessarily bad. I think it's how, again, back to kind of my previous conversation, but how we've addressed it is what makes it bad.
Yeah.
Gender roles are okay, and I believe they're okay. There are just some things that I don't want to do, or that maybe she doesn't want to do, or whatever. But I think that you brought up a good point, is especially if you're going to be in a relationship, having conversations about that is important, and being okay with having conversations about that. You said Sam likes to do yard work. That's awesome. Go do yard work together. Do the dishes.
He's like, nah.
do the dishes together. Not every single time, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
just because she's doing it doesn't mean, well, no, I can't do it.
yeah,
because
like I'll weed eat
Or-
and she'll mow. Like,
Yeah.
that's what she likes to do.
Or,
so-
well, David's out there doing the weed eating, so I just can't go out and work anymore, and I'm being oppressed as a woman. No. Or, again, now I know this has never crossed your mind, but it shouldn't be like, oh, Sam's doing the dishes, so I'm just going to sit here on the couch, and I can't go clean the house.
That literally happened today. She got her handled.
Okay, maybe it happened. I don't believe you, but I'm sure it wasn't like, man, I would love to go help her do the dishes, but she's taking care of it, and since she's doing, I can't do it.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. That's how I feel like it's being addressed. Like, well, because the man's doing it, I can't, or because the woman. No, do things together.
I feel like they're still looking at it through these glasses of looking back in the past. Like women 300 years ago were treated terrible. Okay, like couldn't vote, couldn't have a say, couldn't even be a witness in court. Stuff like that. It's awful. But to think that is still going on today, and to keep drawing back on that is just ludicrous.
Let's move forward and make a better idea,
Yeah.
a better arrangement, or whatever. Same. Again, this is just my broken recordness, but we flipped too far to the other side where now it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
You don't have to be oppressed as a man because you want to do manly things. You don't need to be oppressed as a woman because you want to do womanly things. But on the flip side, you don't have to be oppressed because you're not super manly. You don't have to be oppressed because you're not really into sewing and baking.
Yeah.
Right? Like you want to drive a race car, drive a race car. You want to be an astronaut, be an astronaut. Doesn't matter who you are. You want to sew and bake? By all means, sew and bake, regardless of what gender you are. Find your interest and then do them, and then we should just leave each other alone and not push this stuff on them, right? Again, raising children, yeah, maybe I shouldn't always tell my kid, don't cry. That's not healthy because I am teaching him to repress his emotions, teaching him how to responsibly and appropriately express those emotions are good. No. But on the flip side, I shouldn't be like, you should cry about it right now. You should cry. This should be making you cry. You should cry. Yeah. Feel this and cry. Now I'm putting emotions into him that maybe he doesn't even have.
I would start crying if my dad looked at me like that because he was talking to me like that, not because I actually wanted to cry.
Well, because then you become overwhelmed. But I feel like when we're telling, like, because the toxic masculinity piece, kind of coming back into that, is saying, you know, we're telling kids, our boys specifically, you shouldn't cry, you should man up. Yeah. Well, on the flip side now, I shouldn't tell him, I mean, I shouldn't necessarily tell him, don't be a crybaby, and you should, you know, whatever, in that context. Sometimes just man up and deal with it. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. But on the flip side, I shouldn't be pushing emotion into him to say, you need to be crying about this. You need to, you know. And
you need to feel sorry for what men before you did.
Yeah, or just feel bad about what's happening right now. Yeah. Or not even feel bad. You should just feel something. Maybe I don't feel anything. I don't care that the bird died. I mean, whatever. Yeah. Well, you should feel something. Well, no, I wasn't connected to the bird. I don't care. Like, it doesn't, I watched Armageddon and I didn't bawl my eyes out. Well, you should have. Well, I didn't. So
don't you lie about that.
That was an example. I absolutely bawled my eyes out. But
sissy.
You just flipped it. Just
tricked him. I knew he
was
cried.
like what Corey and I were talking the other day. It was like 2 movies in history that are like, doesn't matter who you are, you're gonna cry. It was Armageddon and what was the other one?
No. The Notebook.
The Notebook, yeah.
The only time men can cry are like during war movies, like Saving Private Ryan. One tear can come down. One tear. At the end.
Yeah. So, you know, Mel Gibson charging across the battlefield, and you're like, oh, sad. You know?
That's it.
Yeah, those are the only 2.
No, I try to teach my kids
the end of Lethal Weapon because it's over. But
I try to teach my kids to be in control of their emotions, not to like repress them, but like my son, my daughter, they skin their knee. I'm like, yeah, it hurts. You can cry, but you don't need to wail about it for 5 neighbors down to hear about it. Like, there's nothing you can do right now besides just deal with it and let's get it taken care of. Yeah. You know, I don't think that's toxic.
Well, it's healthy. Yeah. Dealing with things appropriately is healthy. Yeah. Headbutted my microphone
because you really agreed with it.
Yeah, but so yeah, okay. For the sake of whatever, no such thing as toxic
yes.
But it's a myth.
Way to go.
But
we did it.
But I say that with the understanding that there are toxic people.
Yes, absolutely.
All 12 of them out there that act like
right. Myths. So there is toxic masculinity because the person who's masculine is toxic, but not in general like they're portraying it. I'll agree with that. But there's just toxic people.
Yeah, absolutely. So 100%.
I mean, I guess it's just basically on semantics at that point.
Our next
right?
topic
I'm fine
is,
with that. I'll take it.
I think our next topic should be mansplaining.
Let me tell you what that is.
I'll give you a breakdown.
Where you know you've gone too far and you're backing up so that she's still happy with you. That's mansplaining. That's and we talked about it.
I love it. It's fun.
All right.
Yeah, that's all I got.
That's all you got
for today, anyway.
I'm not gonna lie. I did not expect it to go as long as it did. I really thought it'd be much shorter.
Yeah.
I also started out this podcast for those who are listening, saying I have nothing to say about this. Yeah, that was false.
And then we started.
There is one thing though, just some housekeeping things. I apologize because I've been saying our email is in the comments, and then someone pointed out there's no email in the comments. So hopefully
there's an email in the podcast description on Spotify. It's like connected.
But not
there's
in
a
YouTube.
There's a little button that says "See More," and so you click on that, and then the email pops up on Spotify. But I haven't
But
seen
on
it on
YouTube,
YouTube.
there
yeah.
isn't one.
Yeah,
Which
you can leave like actual comments on.
Yeah, I
the,
think
you can leave
on the
actual
YouTube,
comments,
though,
but
yeah.
also the email needs to be put. Well, we're gonna try and get the email in there somewhere, so that if you're not watching on Spotify and you're only watching on YouTube, you can still send us. an
Leave a
email.
good comment. We'll read it.
Yeah.
I think that was the thing that we were doing with YouTube is just leave a comment more
Okay.
so, and then because Spotify you can't leave comments obviously.
Right. I still think we should have that. We're having.
I will.
This might be cut, but can we put it in there? Okay.
This is like
Cool.
watching a baker make a cake.
Because I had some people who were like, "I have some suggestions. I would like to email you for topics," but there was no email in the thing. So I'm
It
like,
keeps
oh.
going for this entire conversation. People are like, "All right, I'm done."
I don't need to see how the sandwich is made. I just want the sandwich.
But anyways, if you are still listening, leave a comment, send an email.
Yes,
Has anybody ever checked the email address since we started this?
I don't have access
Oh,
to
yeah.
the email address.
Yeah, so Corey needs to get us access
That's
to the
on
email
Corey.
address. Okay, we can be done. We're
Yeah.
done. Let's be-
Toodles.